Bug Fables: The Everlasting Sapling is a role-playing video game developed by Panamanian independent studio Moonsprout. It was originally released on November 2019 for Windows, and in May 28th of 2020, it was released onto the home console market, the Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. Bug Fables itself takes inspiration in art and gameplay from the first two Paper Mario games. The game's plot centers around three bugs, V, Kabu, and Leif, as they search the mystical land of Bulgaria in pursuit of vast treasures and eternal life. This is the base synopsis of the game, but as you explore, there are special codes that you can find throughout the game that adds in extra challenges or just visual appeal. The one we are going to be talking about is the TUFFBUGS menu code, which enables all hard codes in one. Let's first talk about how the combat works. The combat is played in a turn-based format, which makes use of small minigames similar to Paper Mario, as the player must time button presses to maximize the efficacy of their moves or take less damage from enemy attacks. The party also shares teamwork points, which are used for special attacks, as well as medal points, which are used for equipable medals that can either enhance certain abilities, grant resistance to status debuffs, or unlock special moves upon winning a battle. The party is awarded exploration points. Earning enough exploration points will increase the party's level, where the player can choose to increase their HP, PP, or MP. During the TUFFBUGS challenge, you are not given any exploration points, but instead you must build yourself up with medal points, and the only way to level up is by spending berries, the game's currency, to level up. I will be talking about my experience with the TUFFBUGS challenge and figure out if the game is truly difficult and what enjoyment one can expect from this challenge. I am Tara of DVG Stories, and let's get into it. Going through the first chapter, I kind of immediately found out that the hardest part of the TUFFBUGS challenge was dealing with the regular enemies. Also, the blocking tutorial makes you almost die because the tutorial pauses trying to show you how to block, so it misses the super block. But other than that, I was surprised seeing how much damage you can take by missing a block. These lowly seedlings will two-shot you. Interesting was when saving Leif, you really have to hit the blocks in order to survive the encounter. Safe to say I did die initially because I was just bad at blocking, but I was able to get past on my second go. Most of Steakmouth's den is pretty alright. I mostly just avoided the battles when I could, so the passage of the den was pretty easy. I made sure to try and get the secret areas too and get the magical seed, freezing and avoiding the mushrooms just so we can get to the spooter. The first boss was pretty easy for me. I was able to do it on my first try, but I think it was just because I got lucky, and the spooter did not do its AoE attack. I was also able to do a bunch of super guards, so the first boss was easy, but if you miss your blocks, this fight can be unforgiving, but we managed to go through. In Chapter 2, this is the point where the player gets to choose how they want to start playing the game, what strategies they would like to use to beat enemies and bosses. I heard that some people would use a bunch of spicy bombs to fight bosses, and also having sleep resist was good, because if you miss a block with the numbnails, your character is taken out of the battle. I decided to embrace the sleep and went with the heavy sleeper badge on Kabu. This was the point I found out that the easiest path to victory was to be able to avoid blocking. You'll definitely see this come into play later in the game. One of the first challenges was dealing with Zast and Mothlivia, because this is the first of the moments where you can't cheese by having Kabu take damage, because there is a chance for AoE. I think most of these early battles are really what makes this challenge worth doing, since most of the tools you have in the game are not there yet, so you need to be creative in getting past these segments. Venus and the Guardian, I feel, I only really won because of luck. Early in the battle I was able to do damage and defend with Kabu in his sleep. One thing I didn't know is that flying enemies actually have a damage weakness to V, so in this battle V and Leif both had an advantage for fighting the Guardian. But what really helped me was that I got lucky with my ice falls and I froze the Venus Sprout twice. And in this battle, you only need to defeat the Guardian and the Sprout dies with the boss, but it was still an intense battle. A bit later I also went and did the optional boss Monsieur Scarlet, and I definitely did this much sooner than most people. I did not have the luxury of Frigid Coffin for Leif, and I was able to get through mainly due to luck. She has an attack that basically insta-kills my team. She once did it to me, when I just had one turn left to beat her. So I still need at least one more turn to beat her. Oh, why did you have to fucking do that one? Scarlet was hard, but not too difficult once you get timings and your inventory set up. Just gotta be lucky she does not do her AoE attack too much. I want to mention that a lot of times during these early chapters, I mostly went to the Golden Hills and farmed up berries for levels and items. This was my grinding because it was something more profitable than fighting the enemies, which gave more berries since berries are basically the experience in this game. Chapter 3 was an interesting one because this is a chapter that really worried me, and why that is because in this chapter you are locked into the hive due to a security breach. This one really scared me because even though most of the hive was easy to deal with because this is the chapter where Leif gets his shield, this basically allows us to ignore nearly all mob fights, but what really worried me was the big boss fight with the heavy droid. I did not have enough supplies to get past the droid, nor could I go get more. I could only rely on what was in the factory. Eventually, I did find a medal that really helped me out, which was the Shock Trooper medal. Along with this, I found out that you could get a good team point healing item at a price, which was the Obama Honeys. This item was really crucial because I needed the big TP heal during the heavy drone fight, and with Shock Trooper I was able to take advantage of the Obama Honeys, and after an hour of trying to do the fight and getting lucky of not getting hit by the AoE, I was able to perfectly kill the heavy drone with Kabu living on 1 HP. This fight was a real doozy just because I feel this is really the place you can soft lock yourself with the TUFFBUG codes enabled. I think that chapter 4 is probably the best chapter for the TUFFBUGS challenge. This is the chapter in which you must go inside the castle in the sand area, but in order to do that you must collect some key pieces, and one of them being in the bandits hideout. The bandits themselves are pretty tough just cause for the fact that they have defenses and all are capable of some AoE attacks, and all do heavy damage to the players. But what is mostly the best battle in the game was the mini boss battle with the Sotheles. In this battle you have to be fair, you're not able to use items, so if you've been relying on items up to this point, he is your stopgap. This fight, I believe, is the best fight in the game for the TUFFBUGS challenge because the fight itself requires planning and actually being good at the game. Getting your blocks is important because you cannot stall in this fight, you are very limited on resources. But I think just showing how clean this fight was speaks for itself. Sucks. I'm so close. I'm so close. So close to doing it. That's good. Mm-hmm. This is what I wanted! This is the exact thing that I wanted! They froze him on the first try! This fight was probably the main highlight of the TUFFBUGS challenge because once you get past this fight, you're able to cheese most of the fights in the game using Bubble Shield and Taunt with Kabu while you build up damage on V. The rest of the fights just divulge into stalling for damage and then healing up team points. This is really the easiest way to get past the next chapters. One of the things I think was actually pretty hard too was the Devourer's Bounty. This boss has some moves that can really screw up the team, not only with AoE, but later in the fight, the AoE attack can be used to eat one of your teammates, and when that happens, probably best to restart the fight, as you cannot use the teammate and Devourer also heals off the teammate. The start of chapter 5 has lots of side quests, but one of the ones you needed to do was Leif's request, which takes you into the hidden research facility in Steakmouth Den. This one you had to actually fight the enemies to receive the keys, and part of the game was slightly harder because of the Zombeetle's AoE attacks. But that is the only problem in the puzzles areas. The main boss fight with the Zamoth is interesting because you can't bubble cheese for the start. You need to last a few turns of the fight until the boss uses its super move, but then Leif will save you and you can cheese again. But just to be safe, the chances that Zamoth will do its AoE attack and will take you down. But other than that, the boss goes down quick. The swamplands were fairly simple too, just needing to beat the puzzles in the area to continue. The only enemy problem was the large orange bug native because they had an AoE attack, but other than that, just making sure that you have enough TP with Kabu to do damage against the beast at the end was enough to complete the swamplands. Wasp Fortress was pretty easy, just going through the puzzles using Kabu, Leif to cheese and beat Fluffy. The Termite Kingdom was fairly easy because I did not have to worry about figuring out the foggy outskirts, and the Primal Evil just gets owned by the taunt to bubble strat. There's some challenges around the second Zas and Mothliva fight, but only because Mothliva has a chance to do an AoE attack. But at this point we have some insurance with the Miracle Matter for V, and they go down easy. I had to do one redo in order to get better luck with Mothlivia's AoE. The next part is the Rubber Prison, which was fairly simple, but at this point in the game you realize how important it is not to get first struck. I got first struck once and just died. I could not do anything about it. Other than that, the puzzles were simple. You just go through the area, and getting to the Fluffy tank was fairly simple, but you just gotta be mindful of the second phase due to the AoE attacks. AoE seems to be the main villain for the TUFFBUGS run. Most of the bosses and enemies don't have AoE attacks, but those that do really hurt. But once you get AoE insurance and Miracle Matter and first plating, then at least you have a way to deal with the random attack patterns. The Deadlands in the final chapter are fairly simple and easy. Our characters are the strongest they can be, and we can have access to most medals and boosting berries. The Deadlanders were easy because Kabu, Leif, cheese, but the exception is the Flyers because they can do AoE. But as I said, insurance is good. With this though, I did find out that poison basically ruins the first plating medal, as the damage you take from poison counts as taking damage from an enemy. However, what's interesting is that the first plate medal still works if an item takes health away. So using an Obama Honey does not affect the first plating medal, but using Weak Stomach does affect it. The ambush was fairly easy. I just basically let Chompy and Maki finish off the Deadlander Alpha just because I could. The final puzzle area was simple. I mostly avoided fights because there really is no point to do them. And so we get to the Wasp King. The Wasp King was mostly a war of attrition, considering for the fact he has multiple heals, and if you have enough TP items or way to restore TP, you can endlessly cheese him until he dies. And that was Bug Fables' Everlasting Staffing, the Tough Bug Challenge. Honestly, it was a very interesting challenge. I think the most challenging parts of the challenge, though, were the first few chapters, because I feel like Bug Fables itself has a super powerful method of clearing the game once you get to the later chapters. You gain so much power once you get to chapter 5, in that, honestly, you can push through the rest of the game. Before the first few chapters, it took me about 30 hours of gameplay to clear. But once I get up to chapter 5 and received all the medals, I was able to get through the final chapters extremely quickly, and it only took me about 10 hours to complete chapters 5, 6, and 7. It really goes to show that this game really does have an inverse difficulty curve, so that the game doesn't actually get harder as you go into it, just because of how easy it is to cheese the enemies. But with that, how hard was actually the TUFFBUGS challenge? I'd say it was pretty challenging at the start, but got easy at the end. I think it's still a challenge worth doing though. I would certainly put it as baby's first challenge run. It would test your skills early on, but then you just beat the game with the stuff the game gives you. You can try and add extra challenge to it and make it so you have to fight every enemy encounter. And I think that's actually where most of the challenge is, because the normal enemies just really hurt. But for bosses, only the first couple of chapters were challenging, and after chapter 4 I think it becomes much easier. But certainly give it a shot. The game is a beautiful homage to Paper Mario, and it definitely deserves a playthrough.